Hello everyone, today we continue to bring you BL drama SaiDakPhaiSi the series. Due to an accident, David is forced to become an employee of Lowry from a freelance painter, and begins his miserable life at work. Early that morning, David and Lowry woke up at almost the same time, but there was a stark contrast between the extreme sophistication of one and the sloppiness of the other. They arrive at the office at about the same time, and while David is trying to open the door, Lowry arrives and shows him what facial recognition technology is all about. Once the two enter the company, Yuri takes over for David and introduces him in detail to his interesting co-workers at the company, as well as Noe, the deputy CEO and shareholder who appreciates David's beauty. David is overwhelmed by the enthusiasm of Yuri and Noe, but the company environment doesn't seem so bad. On the other hand, Liam is shooting a promotional poster, but he is a bit nervous. So, Pearl divinely recites a mystical incantation to startle everyone. Luckily, that's when Bruce finally arrives on set. As soon as the two meet, Liam's nerves ease. The two of them are also having a great time, shooting their CP promotional posters. In the company, employees are in a small group, discussing the orientation party to welcome David. They turn off their computers early to prepare for the event, but then Lowry bursts out of the office and presents David with a whole new set of creative tasks. Whether or not the great artist understands, Lowry also demands that David, dressed in a suit, go with him to a client meeting the next day. If David doesn't know anything about creativity, let him ask Yuri. Immediately afterward, Lowry turned her head again, while issuing a new task to Yuri. This is great. Even if the computer is turned off, it's useless. Overtime has become a necessity, and the orientation party is bound to go out of the window. The next day, Lowry has arrived at the coffee shop where she has an appointment with a client, but David is late. The other side has finally arrived. Lowry turned her head and was almost blinded by the green-clad David in front of her. But time was running out, and there was no time to change, so Lowry took David into the coffee shop first. The client I'm meeting today is the owner's wife of the Golden House. She saw David's fluorescent green instead and thought it was okay. When it came time to discuss ideas, David disregarded the negotiated red and gold pairing, and instead boldly chose a green and gold pairing. Even with the many effects done, Lowry saw the situation and was anxious and angry, was trying to clean up this headache, but the boss's wife unexpectedly liked the idea because it was innovative and energetic. Lowry, what can you say when you see that your customers love it? So he played the chameleon, quickly changed his face and praised the idea. David's artistic mind, coupled with Lowry's business approach, resulted in a solution that pleased the owner's wife. So the two sides quickly entered the price negotiation stage. Lowry quoted $500,000, and David quoted $100,000. This huge gap made the boss's wife think deeply and said she would go back and discuss it with Mr. David's maneuvering has made Lowry furious. He dragged David outside the cafe and gave him a severe reprimand. Just as the two are still arguing amicably, the owner's wife reappears and says she agrees with the program and price. Lowry is only now smiling again, and David, whose creativity has been approved, is pleased. Immediately afterward, Lowry and David return to the studio. Lowry is curious about the progress of this painting, but David hasn't put pen to paper yet. After agreeing not to push each other, Lowry has to change the subject and ask about David's aspirations to become a multi-billionaire. David's wishes for a normal, peaceful, idyllic life. Unlike David, Lowry would want to make more money if he became a 10-billionaire because he can't be left alone. And David was touched by Lowry's words. The two walked around to the courtyard. Lowry feels that life as it is now is the idyllic life that David aspires to. But David knows that it's not enough, that he has no lover, no family, no friends. Such a life is loneliness, not peace. Lowry is suddenly curious as to why David is taking himself home during business hours. But I didn't realize that the artist was coming back to catch up on his sleep. So Lowry watched David fall asleep in his chair in his fluorescent green pants. On the other hand, the news of Bruce's appearance in the BL drama has been officially announced, and Lowry looks at the news and wonders what she's thinking. At that moment, Noe walks in excitedly. Now she can finally show off to everyone that the other male lead is Liam. But Liam looks at Lowry, who is silent, and quietly signals Noe to stop talking. David had not yet arrived when Lowry arrived at the office, so he called and pressed, and despite having a boss who only knew how to rush people, David doggedly cut the bananas down and took them to the office with him. Looking at David, who was late, Lowry didn't pursue the matter too far. However, Lowry's mood changed when she saw the mineral water that David had brought in, which was endorsed by Bruce. He was furious and ready to go out and buy a bottle himself. Such a boss who is so good at ordering people around goes out to buy a water by himself, leaving David, who stays behind, confused and unable to stop himself from spitting on the glitchy boss. Next, everyone gathered in the conference room. A large company saw how well Lowry's team handled a wedding event and handed over the product planning to Lowry. Lowry is not satisfied with a single product. He aims to curate a full range of products. As a result, Lowry has become more demanding of his employees. He planned to bring Kwon and David with him when he negotiated, but David's fluorescent green suit was a major headache. Lowry had to bring David to the styling studio to check everything from the look to the clothes. Not to mention, David looks really cool when he's cleaned out. Lowry, the three of them, arrived at the place of negotiation. Kwon explains the company's proposal to the other party, and the person in charge looks satisfied, but he wonders if Lowry is trying to curry favor with his company by wearing blue suits on all three of them. David's attempt to tell the truth was stopped by Lowry, who then dealt with it with a wealth of skill. The assistant on the side saw that the boss was not speaking and told Lowry to go back and wait for news first. But when they stand up to say goodbye, the boss snaps and he decides to use Lowry's company. Lowry was happy that the decision went so well, but was silenced when she learned that Bruce would be the face of the company for the next year. Nonetheless, everyone was so happy to get the business that they prepared a celebration party together. Yuri tries to invite her boss to say a few words, but Noe speaks first, and everyone gets a laugh out of what she says. Finally, it was Lowry's turn to speak. He was not in the best of moods, but he praised everyone. Colleagues are drinking and having a good time, while Lowry is alone in the hall, preoccupied. David sees this and walks over. As soon as she meets David, Lowry is all fired up and her prickly skills return. But David doesn't care. At that moment, Noe walks up. It turns out that Liam hasn't come by yet, so Lowry sends a video to the other side. Liam just says he's here to deliver something to a friend, but doesn't mention who it is, and hangs up hastily. The phone had just hung up when Bruce appeared in front of Liam, and Pearl is hiding in the corner, with her cell phone at the ready. This Shima Zhao's heart is known to all. Bruce doesn't understand why Liam is so obedient to Pearl and never resists, and Liam felt a little awkward and didn't agree to the invitation for coffee even though it was offered. On the other hand, David looks at Lowry, who is in a bad mood, and tries to drag him to play the game with everyone. But Lowry doesn't accept the invitation and gets a little impatient. David takes a wild guess that the nonsensical sentiment must have something to do with Bruce. At the sound of the name, Lowry became even more impatient, wanting to be left alone for a while, since the other side refuses to say, then persuade him to drink. After all, a drunkenness to solve 1,000 sorrows. But then Lowry arrogantly tells them that the wine quota is full for today. David is speechless, but he doesn't give up. He brings a cocktail and Lowry, who at one moment arrogantly says no, at the next moment drinks it all and falls down on the table. Meanwhile, co-workers are getting drunk and waxing lyrical. David sees Lowry drunk and tries to call a cab for him, but he hears Bruce's name coming out of Lowry's mouth, and he's clearly depressed. David can't help but ask Noe about Bruce, but is too drunk to tell him anything. David has no choice but to ask someone he knows to send Lowry back, but he doesn't agree. On the other hand, Bruce is at home memorizing his lines, and while he's fidgeting, he looks at a folder on his computer desktop and can't help but open it. Folder is a series of photos, but all of them are Lowry and Bruce's sweet photos. It seems that they are really exes. Looking at the picture, Bruce sighs a little, then closes the computer. David, unable to find anyone, takes Lowry back to his home. Lowry was awakened but was not in a clear state of mind. It's clear that he thinks David is Bruce, taking advantage of his drunkenness to express how much he cares, and to build up the courage to find out if the other person cares about him. David looked at the sullen boss and, somewhat softened, gave an affirmative answer. The atmosphere is a bit county, but the next moment, Lowry throws up, but David brought a basin of water and carefully changed Lowry's clothes and scrubbed her clean. Lowry still thinks the other guy is Bruce, but David holds the other guy's face and seriously tells him he's David. Early the next morning, Lowry was awakened by the sunlight and opened his eyes to a situation that really puzzled him. The clothes have disappeared and it's 10 o'clock. David then comes in and recounts Lowry's story from last night and has an excuse for Lowry not to go to work. Lowry apologized for being so thoughtful, but when David offered to settle the debt, Lowry refused. A hungover Lowry stinks to high heaven, but he's strong enough to ask the question of what to eat before taking a shower. Just after the toss, David's chicken walks to the center of the room and lays an egg straight away. In the company, people are not in good spirits either. The boss didn't show up and co-workers weren't very motivated. Despite David's excuses, everyone is still wondering about Lowry's behavior. And at this point, David is ironing Lowry's clothes. The shirt is settled but the pants aren't dry. Lowry had to borrow David's jeans and belt. The contrast is a bit cute. Lowry tweets about messy rooms, but there's a routine to David's messes. David introduced his paintings to the other side of the room. Each painting is a reflection of my own mood at the time, from the unhappiness of quarreling with a client to the happy moments. But Lowry is shocked when she turns to her sketchbook. Why does the naked man in here look so much like himself? David grabbed the painting and didn't get it back, so he had to come clean. It turns out that when he was helping Lowry clean up last night, the other man's smooth lines and muscles gave him the urge to draw. And not only does David draw when he says he will, he even poses in a sexy way. This was not enough to convince Lowry, but David's pious apology makes Lowry choose to let him off the hook. He was just about to say forget it when he noticed the scars written on the back of the painting. Lowry was even more annoyed by this speculation of his own mind, but he took the painting anyway and said nothing. It seems that David has also noticed the unusual relationship between Lowry and Bruce, but at this point, he doesn't realize that he has also unknowingly changed his mind about Lowry. What will happen between the three of them after that? We'll see you on the next program.